Prince Harry and Meghan Markle could lose their royal titles under a new law proposed by Conservative MP. Is it true or is it false?
Well, it's about time, if I'm being brutally honest. I remember I was asked this question when all of this stuff kicked off over a year ago now, and I said it actually should have been up to the royal family to sort this out. I think they have done a terrible job at trying to bring Harry and Meghan to heel. So, yeah, I do think Parliament has to step in now because this is just dragging on. I think it's just exhausting, this story now. I think the people in this country are just bored of it and it needs to end. What's interesting is how they're going to do it. So they're going to use an old law from the middle of the First World War, which is from 1917, called the Titles Deprivation Act. Ooh. Yes, I looked this stuff up. This is how interesting my life is.
Do you know what I love about that? Do you know what I love about that? You looked straight at camera and went, I look.
He knows his brand.
Accidental partridge, but yeah.
As if people are going to be amazingly impressed by it.
I was impressed. And yeah, so basically, it was an old law that was used to strip German nobility of their British titles during the First World War, and they're going to amend it so that they can strip Harry and Meghan of their titles. It's done by Bob Seeley, the Conservative MP for the Isle of Wight, and I actually think it's about time this happened. Like I said, wasn't in favour of it the first time round, but now, because this has gone on so long, and I think they have massively overstepped this time, it's got to stop.
But you'd be in the odd situation, given that the King hasn't removed their HRH titles, that they'd be HRH Mr. and Mrs. Batten Windsor.
Yeah, this is going to be one for the hereditary people who are interested in that kind of stuff. That's not my kind of politics. But, how they're going to get around this, I'd like, in terms of that
I
stuff.
really don't like the precedent of letting Parliament mandate what the royal family are and what they can be, because it sets this horrible precedent where they'll start to just chip away at the royal family and at the history and culture of this country through Parliament. At the moment, it's for a good cause. It's against the woke, lefty sort of Harry and Meghan. But what happens when it's turned on the actual traditions?
I'm against chipping away at the royal family unless it's Harry and Meghan. Just have a special category.
It starts with the people you don't like, and then it's turned on the ones that you do like.
Well, I think the royal family, I don't think the King can do it without Parliament. I think they're the ones that actually have this power. And as far as our laws go, that's not an old law. That's quite a recent law.
That's true. For me, Carmen, I might look this old, but I'm not actually that old.
The thing is, Meghan doesn't value the royal family at all. I remember reading something about when she was on tour with Prince Harry in Australia, and she said, why are all these people here? It's silly. Yeah. So she has no concept or no respect or no understanding for it anyway. I mean,
she was also horribly rude to the good people of Dumbarton, because she is the Countess of Dumbarton, and she said that her son only got that title. Oh, right. OK, yes, I'm sorry about that. I've told this story that many times.
Thank you.
What is the answer, Pete?
This is true.
It's absolutely true! OK, Calvin, not being repetitious, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
First time here. The BBC is demanding a £15 increase in the licence fee against the wishes of the Culture Secretary. Is it true or is it false?
I hope it's true, because I hope people get so fed up with the BBC licence fee that they stop paying. This idea that you have to pay the BBC to watch anything, including TalkTV, is ridiculous.
It's madness, isn't it? And the BBC are able to produce all these woke programmes that nobody watches. EastEnders, 90% decline in viewing because of the way they're funded.
Well, we saw as well this week that the Newsnight figures have been dropping rapidly over the last, 10 years or so. This just shows that people aren't even tuning in for the news on BBC anymore. They don't trust the BBC.
I've got to say, thank God nobody watches Newsnight.
Yeah.
I've been on there a few times. It's not a pleasant experience for anyone.
I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because obviously you've made a name for yourself as a political commentator. You've gone a long way with it. Now there's this new breed of political commentators coming in, and the BBC just don't seem interested, do they?
Because they don't want balance.
No.
What people don't realise is that we all have to play by the Ofcom rules. BBC get to do their own internal Ofcom situation, very different to what TalkTV and all the other channels have to do. That is not fair. That's not due impartiality. That's not balanced.
No. So talk us through your appearance on Newsnight. How much fun was it? I mean, probably they were there waiting with pitchforks.
They set you up. They want to get this gotcha moment. They don't actually want to hear what you've got to say. They want to hear you say something that they can really pilly against and say, this guy is an enemy of the people. Whereas actually what we know to be true is that most people in this country are small-c conservative. Most people are what we'd call the silent majority, who believe in common sense British values. But the BBC wants to put down this new woke liberal elite perspective that they're stuck in this Westminster bubble that most people don't connect with.
Yeah, and I must admit, you just spend your life watching the BBC and thinking, this is not the way real people live their lives. They're obsessed with race issues. They're obsessed with trans issues. LGBTQ issues, and actually normal things like education, housing, tax, no interest.
Andre, I grew up watching Doctor Who, right? I used to think that was some great
I
fictional
wondered if
entertainment. Even that's gone down the path of lecturing to the audience of what is appropriate, what's not appropriate. This, in the most recent 60th anniversary episode, they had the whole trans situation of my preferred pronouns are the definitive. It's like, please just stop. Just
But it's
entertain
also,
us.
it's so forced. It doesn't like naturally flow as dialogue. It's almost like a pause from normal dialogue.
Yeah.
To, by the way, now a message from
Oh,
our
yeah, but-
sponsors, the woke pronoun police.
But as Calvin just said, and I don't watch Doctor Who, apparently there was a non-binary alien. I mean,
No, but and Isaac Newton looked slightly different.
Yeah, I
to
saw
his
that.
portrait.
More like me than Isaac.
But
He had the long hair, though.
Yeah.
He did have the long hair.
The interesting thing is if you look at the economics of this as well. So we obviously had the problems with the BBC, but if we look at if it was to be privatised, there's a company that are called the Policy Engine. They've done a big analysis of this, and it actually would cost the Exchequer about £4 billion a year in terms of revenue. But what it would actually do to the poverty line is actually quite interesting. So the people in what they call deep poverty, it would actually relieve that percentage by about 3%. So it would lift so many people out of it if they were just to increase it by this 15, if they didn't increase it. If they do increase it, then it's actually a huge burden on it. So I want to know, those people that love the BBC, why do you not care about the poorest in society? Because if you did...
Also women. So disproportionately it affects women. 70% of the prosecutions from not watching.
Do you know why that is, Calvin? The reason is because this is absolutely true. When you get into trouble for not having a TV licence, it's not whether the building's licence or you should have bought it. It's whoever answers the door.
Yeah.
So
So don't let them in.
The husband hasn't paid the TV licence. Then they knock on the door. The wife opens and goes, "Well, I mean, my husband should have bought it." And then they prosecute the wife.
Is that right?
That is absolutely
that's
true. Good
not
old
very fair.
Good old BBC, eh?
Like for me, what they should do, if people love the BBC so much, if it's such a national institution, if it's so treasured, privatise it, put it on the free market, and see whether people will tune in and buy it.
But then they can be propagandists, because if they were forced to compete in a free market, people would tune out.
Yeah.
But when they've got that money secured, they can say and do what they want.
But also, the other thing is the way that, there is a centre-left broadcaster in the UK, the BBC, taxpayer funded, but they also want to shut down everything else, don't they? YouTube channels, which have appealed to a huge number of people, desperate to get rid of that. So it's not only that they want their own channel funded and for it to be biased, they want to shut down all the competition.
Yeah. We've seen that across the world. Remember, Jacinda Ardern said, "We will be the only source of truth in this country." Very scary.
She's very trustworthy.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Unbelievable.
One of those trusting faces. I trust this woman.
She's got very trusting teeth. Very trusting teeth. Anyway, has the BBC demanded a £15 increase in the licence fee?
No.
It's absolutely true! And by the way, it's true or false, not yes or no. Don't worry, you're not as bad as Derek Lord. Derek Lord didn't know. Derek Lord asked me for the answer. Doesn't understand the concept of a quiz. Elegalibus. Okay. So to Ben, the president of COP28 says there's no science behind plans to phase out fossil fuels. Is it true or is it false?
Well, it's hilarious because they went off to the Saudis thinking, great, we get loads of money to fund this COP sort of thing that they do every year, this eco-warrior mental conference. And then they realised the Saudis are actually sort of entirely reliant on fossil fuels and oil. And they're suddenly so shocked.
By the way,
they're so shocked.
Just to ask you a question.
Yeah.
What country is Dubai in? It's not Saudi Arabia.
UAE.
It's not Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, but the president is Saudi, isn't he?
Oh, okay. I know.
But they're shocked to learn that people whose entire country and their nation and their wealth is based on fossil fuels aren't too happy about this eco-insanity that they're
You mean the Arabs aren't woke?
Yeah. Wow.
Who'd have thunk it?
Although it has to be said that the more wind turbines you put on the national grid, the more they need gas and oil to back them up.
No, that's absolutely true. But my ex-husband, he flies all over the world to get away from me. But
He's not the only one, though.
Oh, you're so funny. Anyway,
I'm contractually obliged to be here.
He's just got back from Dubai. He went to the conference COP28. He said it was like a sort of woke utopia. You had to everything was done on phones. So if you went into a restaurant, there were no menus, no menu option. You couldn't pay by cash. And everything. Yeah, it was scary.
The banker wants you.
Yeah, I've got to be honest with you. I was surprised at that too. Yeah, they're just saying, I can't imagine Lois Perry's ex-husband went to the COP thing. Imagine that's probably why they're divorced. Anyway, we are contractually obliged to be balanced on this show, so welcome the Woke Wabbit! Right. get this over with quickly.
What do you want?
What do you think of COP28?
I think it's been a great success. The solution to climate change is just around the corner. I can feel it.
Go! Right, there we go. That's the legal requirement done. Thank you very much.
It's interesting that this entire event is based around two phrases, phase out and phase down. So this is what the kind of big debate is about. And it's whether nations are going to phase out fossil fuels or whether they're going to be required to phase down from fossil fuels. And it's going to be really interesting because obviously Russia, China, and Saudi Arabia have all said, you do whatever you want, we're just going to do our own thing. The United States has pledged to phase out, we've pledged to phase out, but there's still a lot of countries wavering around at the moment. And I didn't really I don't know if anybody saw it, but the Al Gore interview that he did with Channel 4, where he basically accused the British government of being in the pocket of big oil. And I was like...
Don't ask about that.
Sorry.
Don't talk about that. Don't talk about Al Gore. And also, I want to talk to you. Have you had a haircut recently, Ben?
Not that recently.
Yeah, because your head keeps... Look at that! You're just in the
I'll move back.
You keep eclipsing Pete. If you're going to have a big head, at least regularly go to the barbers.
But bringing it back for you.
Yeah, I can say, yeah.
Thank you, Father.
Calvin, I have to say, I'm glad that you declutter it. Otherwise, you lost it.
I know, yeah. I'm not on the show at all.
No, I went to Davos this year. I went to WEF to kind of see what they're up to. And what I realised is there's no science going on there. They're in this echo chamber. Every single panel, they were all in agreement with each other, patting each other on the back, saying, yeah, of course we agree with climate change is going to end the world in 10 years unless we do X, Y, and Z. There was no challenge. You know, I've heard more science from Lois in the last 5 minutes than I have from all of them at the conference.
But the problem is, I mean, I've said something before that's got me into trouble, but I'm going to say it again. I genuinely believe that climate change is a paganistic religion. This obsession with the sort of, no disrespect, but with the priestly class.
Yeah, the
idea that they don't care about the science. And then there's this zealotry to it that is more like a medieval church than it is any sort of scientific campaign.
Yeah, it's like they're doing rain dances. If we do enough weird sort of ritualistic stuff, then we can change the weather. It's literally paganism.
And
they've got their own blasphemy laws, haven't they?
They do.
Challenge it or speak against it.
And they've got their Joan of Arc, Greta Thunberg.
And David Attenborough.
So I had a chat with her.
David Attenborough can be Moses.
He could be
I had a
Moses.
20-minute conversation with Greta Thunberg. She had absolutely nothing to say without a script. So that's how you know these people are puppets.
Yeah, child actors.
So come on, right. We are not moving on this show until you tell us every detail about meeting Greta.
I mean, she was very sweet. She was a very lovely young woman, but she didn't have anything important to say, nothing of any contribution to the conversation. I said, look, I come from an audience that disagree with a lot of what you said. What would you say to my audience? Nothing.
She said, how dare you? How dare you?
Or would you criticise the Chinese government?
No.
They're not planning to go back to caves. They're planning for us to go to caves.
Right.
It's like when they're flying around in private jets. I mean, they just, as far as they're concerned, it makes perfect sense. Ordinary people don't fly, so we get the private jets. But we have to travel. We're important.
Yeah, exactly. And I know you don't want me to talk about Al Gore yet, but so I'll save my comment for that. But yeah, it's staggering. The entire, like you said, the it's just an exercise in virtue signaling. That's all they are now. But what I find staggering is that the moment you dare challenge these people, it was, this guy has to be taken out. They cannot have anybody like going after their kind of singular idea. And that's the thing that I will give Rishi Sunak credit for when he kind of rolled back some of the net zero stuff here, where he said, you've got to bring people with you on this journey. And I know, Lois, you're not the biggest fan of all this stuff, but I thought he was actually hitting the nail on the head that if you want these kind of movements to take root, you've got to have an audience with it, and even you've got to bring the biggest skeptics.
I'll tell you what we'll do. We will give you a bit of an Al Gore question, but this is for a bonus point for everyone.
Right.
A bonus point. Al Gore predicted that the Arctic ice cap will have melted by what year?
2015?
No.
2010?
No.
2025.
No.
2012.
You're the nearest. It was 2030. He said that all the ice caps would be gone by then. Well done, Al.
I know, yeah.
OK, so as the president of COP28 said that there's no science behind phasing out fossil fuels.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's absolutely true!
Not yes or no, Ben.
Yeah, it's not,
I do what I want.
Just keep your head out the way of the camera. Just lean back. Lean back. Don't give the camera head. OK. Sadiq Khan is planning to shut down the British Museum and send all the artwork to developing countries, Lois. Is it true or is it false?
Oh, well, nothing would surprise me with the Mayor of London because he doesn't actually care about London or British people or English people or anyone, in fact, apart from, you know, possibly the people that vote for him. I mean, if he gets in again, I will absolutely despair. What he's done to London, he's destroyed London, businesses, everything.
I worry.
Motorists hate him.
I worry, Lois, about, and I've said this to you before, about these devolved assemblies, the way that time and time again they're deliberately destroying the places that they're supposed to represent in the belief that Westminster will bail them out. I think it's really destructive for the country.
I absolutely 100% agree. I mean, we saw that during COVID, didn't we? The devolved assemblies were much more militant, and we now have found out that the only reason that they kept face masks in schools or implemented them in the first place is because Nicola Sturgeon said she was going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So you're right. And then people sort of outdo each other on how madly, insanely woke they can be.
What's she up to now, Nicola Sturgeon?
She's got a camper van.
Oh, she's got a camper van.
Calvin, I want to ask you this, because you are somebody who we can see has just been recently ordained, and congratulations
Thank you very
on
much.
that, by the way. I'm sorry I didn't make it. But you're somebody who's given your life to a vocation. I see time and time again now people in public office who actually are just there for what they can get. There's no real devotion to duty anymore. Or am I wrong?
You're absolutely right. I mean, look at our Prime Minister. If I asked you, what does he stand for? What does he want to achieve? Why do you think he's taken this role as Prime Minister? I think you'd struggle to come up with an
Well,
answer.
to be honest, my answer would be to get the next big job in Silicon Valley, which is proving your point.
I mean, people may hate Boris Johnson for a whole host of reasons, but at least I think people like him believe in service and duty and obligation, and this idea that they're there to serve the people that elect them.
How can we bring that back? I know this is Saturday night. I know we're meant to have a bit of fun, but given you've just been ordained, I do think it's important to ask how we bring back decent people, honourable people, honest people into politics.
Well, it starts with education. We've got to stop saying that school and university is for the sake of getting a good job. We've got to start saying this is to become a good person and to contribute to your society and to make a better community for your family and those around you. It's all about service, duty and obligation.
Amen to that, brother. I'm going to give him a round of applause. I just find the whole thing depressing. Yes, I'm sucking up to him, but I'm a Catholic. I don't care. Screw you, acts of succession. Okay, so is Sadiq Khan planning to give away all the artefacts from the British Museum? Is it true or is it false?
Well, starting with the Elgin marbles, it's false.
It's absolutely false!
Thank God for that.
Thank God.
That was The Woke That Was continues after the break. Welcome back to That Was The Woke That Was.
A BBC presenter has said he struggles with too many white colleagues and it affects his mental health. Is it true or is it false? But put another way, Pete, is there someone at the BBC who's just a big racist?
Yeah. I mean, just the one. But no, honestly, I saw this story and I was like, my eyes just automatically rolled. I was like, I couldn't believe what I was reading, because to me, this is just narcissism. This story was nothing but a guy who clearly wants a better radio slot, so he's playing the two big cards in our society you can play. And it's race and mental health. And that's what he's done here. I am absolutely sick to the back teeth of these people using this kind of stuff, which is very serious issues, societal issues, literally to make a name for themselves. And that's what annoys me.
But as a political commentator, do you get it? Certainly I used to, where somebody'd phone you up and go, oh, you seem absolutely fantastic. Do you know anybody who's as good as you, but who's either black or a woman?
Yeah, I usually get, do you know any women?
Yes.
And I was like, well, not really.
No way! That surprised me.
I know, yeah.
You know me. You know me.
Do you know, the thing about the BBC, though, is that it actually hires above the national average of ethnic minority people from those backgrounds. So it's like, what office is he working in then? Because according to most people at the BBC, there's very few white people working there. So I found that staggering.
He could almost just quit if he doesn't feel at home there.
That is exactly what I
Most
thought.
people, if they didn't like their job, would just leave and
I
go
mean,
work somewhere else.
I've got to be honest with you. If Nihal wants to go to a place where it's not predominantly white, he really does need to leave the country.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that in order to be nasty to the bloke, but ultimately, if he wants to live in a mono-ethnic culture, then that's not Britain anymore.
Well, you could go and work for the French football team. Very well.
I actually got that reference.
It is astonishing, though, isn't it? Living in a predominantly white country and being upset at being in an environment that's predominantly white. Like, would he go to an African country and say, this is too black for me? I highly doubt it. It's become acceptable to be
thing
racist.
that- hang on a second, Calvin. I just worry if you look back at Karl Marx believed in class struggle. When that failed, I now believe that they're interested in race struggle. I think that we are more racially divided country now than we were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But I think it's a slippery slope, and I think we're all a little bit woke. For example, I wouldn't see any programme on any TV station, this included all the other stations, that wouldn't have a man and a woman. Like, we've come to some degree of we have to at least tick some check boxes, even if it's not the race one, we've got to do the sex one. Like, we're just going to stop. We're just going to say, you're the best person for the role.
Absolutely.
If Nihal was sat here now, what would you say to him?
Well, if you don't like England, there are plenty of other places that are more ethnically diverse than this. If you want to be in an environment that's the same skin colour as you, I can point to a couple of countries for you.
I mean, I always think
the ticket.
I always think that
Money.
I always think what you need to do is subtract the word black in. And can you imagine if he'd said that he was angry that the place was overwhelmingly black? I mean, he'd be cast out if he was a white guy.
would be.
And I don't understand the hypocrisy of it. This is a racist comment.
It is. I'm mixed race, right? I'm half black and half white, and I'm very rarely in an environment where it's the same, where everyone in the room is half black and half white.
Yes.
But I've never been upset that there are too many white people or too many black people. I don't understand that mentality. What is the first thing you think when you walk into a room is like, who are these people? Not, oh my gosh, are there enough of people that look like me?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, can you imagine if that was your life? You were going, oh, look, I'm sorry, I can't stay at this party. There's underrepresented Asian females or something pathetic.
I very rarely associate with any other women.
But it's just narcissism to go in somewhere and say, this place has to conform to my expectations. Not everyone else has to be sharing in this in some way, and they might have different expectations. So it's all about me.
But in life now, Ben, it is all about the individual. You know, it's all about your truth,
but it's
rather than the truth.
It's like going into like Burger King and saying, I want a McFlurry. And they go, well, we don't serve them here. Well, you have to serve them here. Just go to McDonald's if you want a McFlurry. You don't have to stay somewhere.
Have you not noticed there is a growing trend of this, like throughout these kind of media companies? Because I know Netflix, there's like a walkout over a Dave Chappelle special because there was a trans joke in it.
Yeah.
We've seen it at Channel 4. We saw it at The Guardian.
Is it true, Pete, that a BBC presenter has said his mental health is being damaged because his environment is overwhelmingly white?
Well, that man's damaging my mental health, so it's true.
It's absolutely true! You can see that these questions are completely random. The next one is to Calvin. A Catholic church has sparked a backlash with a new show claiming God is transgender. So first of all, Calvin, is it true or is it false? And secondly, are you able to answer the question?
God is beyond gender. However, he has told us his preferred pronouns. He told us to call him Father, and he came to earth as fully man and fully God, but in the person of Jesus Christ, who was male. So he is not trans, and if a Catholic church is calling him trans, that's a heresy.
Well, I think you should go over there.
He would.
New York, though.
But I suppose there is an attempt by churches to try and be more inclusive. But surely the way of being inclusive is to stand by your principles rather than getting weighed down in stuff that, God as a transsexual.
Right? Pick a religion, either Catholicity or diversity, inclusion, and equality. You can't have them both. You've got to pick one. It's the same with the Church of England. You know, they had should we call our Father, or should we call it something else because it's a bit problematic? And then just wanting to put worldly views into the church instead of bringing the church to the world.
But the Pope has tried to modernise the Catholic Church a little bit. Look at his face. Look at his face.
I mean, I felt that from here.
Didn't he have a trans tea party?
No, he didn't.
No, he did.
No, he didn't.
No, he did. He bust in a load of
No, he didn't. No, that didn't happen. Right, we're moving on, Calvin. Let's be factional for a minute. It's the only time being Irish counts. Okay, has a Catholic church in New York sparked a backlash by having a trans god?
True.
It's absolutely and unfortunately true!
I'm not applauding that. No.
Why were you clapping the transgender god?
Because we need more transgender gods and more transgender tea parties.
So now, not only is the transgender tea parties and transgender god, but it's now gods. How many gods are there?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I haven't really met many.
Okay, well, you've met me. Now go away. Okay, so to Ben Loughnane. Now, just before we go any further, you have to answer true or false, not yes or no. Okay, so Keir Starmer has been attacked by angry backbenchers after praising Margaret Thatcher. Is it true or is it false?
Yeah, this one's a bit ridiculous, isn't it? Because effectively, if you want to be the Prime Minister of this country, you should look back at former Prime Ministers and learn from what they've done, good and bad. You should recognise they had positives and negatives. You shouldn't have a monolithic, angry, aggressive, just stop oil type approach. We go, Margaret Thatcher's an awful person, and we should, dance on her grave or whatever. You need to be pragmatic and reasonable. So he said something slightly positive. He didn't say she was a great leader. He said something just marginally positive about Margaret Thatcher, and everyone going, oh, that's awful.
But what amazes me about Keir Starmer is there is a fundamental problem in both the Conservative and the Labour Party with ignoring their own voters and not standing by genuine principles. It's got nothing to do with Margaret Thatcher. She's been dead for years. It's about turning around and saying, in the Red Wall in 2019, the Labour Party set out to go against the Brexit vote. We need to go to these places and get them back.
Absolutely. And I think, look, anyone who's good faith and reasonable and grown up can understand that people are nuanced. Not everyone is either really bad or really good. I can even say, for example, I don't like Tony Blair. I don't have much good to say about him, but I can say he was a good leader. He was able to control his party and stay in power for a long time by being effective and capable. That doesn't mean that I love him and I think he's great, but certain childish, stupid people get up in arms about this.
Now let's go to Lois now, because one night she had a few drinks and admitted that when you were a PR agent, you worked for New Labour, didn't you? Oh, she thought that would have been long forgotten, didn't you?
What's that about loose lips?
The follies of youth.
On a serious note, you look at some.
No, I had a bit of a sort of thing, like a friendship with Peter Mandelson. Yeah, he was lovely. I liked him.
Okay, well, but if you look at leaders like Blair or Thatcher, there's nothing in our current crop to come anywhere near them, is there?
Exactly, well, certainly not Rishi Sunak. And I just wanted to pick Pete up on the point that you made about the net zero stuff, right? And I'm not going to talk specifically about climate change or anything, but just specifically about, he rolled the car ban back to 2035. Well, actually, what he did was he put a quota in that a certain amount of electric cars had to be sold. So basically, he did it by the back door. It was completely disingenuous policy. So actually, all of those policies were not actual real policies.
But the great thing about Rishi Sunak, and I take my hat off to him, because he's got the Robert Mugabe Award, hasn't he? He managed to lose the election for Prime Minister, but get the job anyway.
No, absolutely. And I think I read this morning as well, obviously the Tories were brought in on a Brexit leaving mandate, leaving Europe. And Jeremy Hunt has criticised everything that's going wrong at the moment with the country on the fact that we left the European Union. I mean, what was the point in putting the Tories in power?
George Osborne has said that the Conservative Party has lurched to the right and it's not inconceivable that Nigel Farage could be the leader. Well, hang on a second. If it's lurched to the right, I don't understand why the leadership don't reflect that.
Yeah. Well, no, people want them to be right-wing.
Yes.
Which is why I'm finding this whole thing about a Labour, landslide a bit strange, because is it just because you're voting for someone else because you're not happy?
I think that's what a lot of this is, because, well, one thing on this story that I think I know a lot of people think it's Keir Starmer's attempt to reach out to Tory voters. I don't think that's what this story is actually about. I think this story is actually about seeing how much leeway he's got within his own party base. Okay. This is what I think, in campaigns, what we call a test balloon. It's to actually look at the reaction of your own base. If you say something wrong, and if a policy goes wrong, who's going to come out to defend you, and how are your own side going to react to it? Because if you look at the Daily Mirror, which is basically the Labour propaganda arm, they said their headline of the day after that speech was "Playing with Fire." And if somebody like the Mirror is not on your side, I mean, he's in a lot of. I think he's in a lot more trouble. This is peak Peter Mandelson. Like, Blair did this quite a lot in 1996, just before the election, because we are, to borrow a phrase from Marvel, we are in the end game now, where the people think we're getting up to the
It's going so well.
I know, it's going so well. But no, people think that we're like a May general election is likely. So what the Labour Party will start to do now is start to test their own base to see how much leeway he's got in terms of his manifesto, because he's already said he's not switching on the money tap, because let's be honest, there isn't any money. So he's got to see how far he can push it. And that's what I think that speech was really about, because he mentioned Attlee, he mentioned Blair, and I think he put Thatcher in there deliberately to see how much he would rile up his own base, more than it was about trying to win over Tory voters.
Is there going to be a landslide?
I don't think there will, because I think two things will sink the Labour Party. Keir Starmer's performance at the leadership elections debates, because let's be honest, he's about as inspiring as a turnip. And I think
I like turnip.
And the Labour manifesto, because the manifesto is going to annoy people, because I don't think they're going to get the tax cuts that they want, and the progressive side of his party is going to go, is that it? I think the Keir Starmer, I think those two things will narrow the polls right down. There was an MRP poll, which is like the big national one, that gave Keir Starmer over a 200 majority. I think that is well out of reality at the moment. I think once we actually get into the election campaign, the Tories will usually try to sort themselves out, and the Labour Party usually put their foot in it. I mean, just 1 second, to borrow a phrase from Stephen Pound, never underestimate the Labour Party to snatch a victory out of the jaws of defeat. Yeah. I mean, it is staggering how they are able to blow up their own campaigns. The other way around. The other way, yes, it's the other way around, actually.
It's the ghost of Ellie Gallivant. He said, come on, Pete, leave it.
This is what I do for a living.
It's Saturday night. It's Saturday night. You boring kid. Right, that may pass at oral rugby club. An appropriate thing to do. Right. Yes. Oh, sorry. That's it's Mrs. Barnes. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Barnes. It's Gillian, isn't it? Yeah. She wants to talk to you. He's boring. I know.
Hi, Mum. Sorry. I'll try to be more entertaining, but he keeps hitting me. Mum, he keeps hitting me. Oh. I'll put it back on.
Come and pick me up.
I've got permission to wound him more. No problem. I shall correct him, Mrs. Barnes. Don't you worry. OK, so has Keir Starmer got into trouble for praising Margaret Thatcher? Is it true or is it false?
It's true.
It's absolutely true. OK, to Lois.
Yes.
Rail Union ASLEF has held a glitzy Christmas party last Friday, the same day they announced a week of train strikes, ruining everyone else's Christmas parties. Is it true or is it false?
Oh, God, that is absolutely disgusting, isn't it? And wasn't there a union guy recently who's overpaid by hundreds of thousands of pounds, and they cleared him completely? You know, they're so hypocritical.
Sorry, union boss with his hand in the till.
I know.
Lois, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
But these will be the same people that, look, it was terrible that there was a party at number 10 before the Queen's husband, Prince Philip's funeral. It was wrong, right? But they would have been the people really having a go at them for that, hating Boris. And this is pretty horrible as well. Yeah. To be ruining everybody else's Christmas and spending union money on a glitzy party, I think it's disgusting.
Calvin, it just feels incredibly selfish what the unions are doing. I mean, I remember when all the rail unions wanted to go on strike during the Olympics. You know, I accept that they want to represent their workers, but they are deliberately inconveniencing people for financial gain.
I don't think they do want to represent the workers. If you look at the ballots, most of the time they're in a minority. What they actually want to do is cause disruption, and the most disruption possible to the ordinary, common British folk. I think they hold too much power. If I was in government, I'd cut them down to size.
I've got an idea. Do you want to hear my trade union idea?
Yeah.
Right. If in cases, and this would be arbitrated by the courts, in cases where your industrial action is grossly disproportionate to the nature of the dispute, i.e. going on rail strike for 3 months over 50 quid, you have to compensate everybody affected by the strike. So what would happen is ASLEF can go on strike whenever they want for no reason at all, but they do have to pay for the taxis of every single person who can't get a train.
No, I completely agree. And just going back to your point, Father Calvin, they do have too much power, but they're getting us out of our cars at the moment, which will mean that the unions will be adjudicating on what events happen and don't happen, because if everyone has to take the train, like the last day of the Conservative Party conference, they did a train strike. You know, so they will end up, I think we talked about this before, deciding what events happen and what events don't.
I think
when you were Calvin, just a matter of interest, when you've decided to go to, what is it, the Swedish Catholic Church?
Nordic Catholic Church.
Nordic Catholic Church. Why did you decide not to become a Calvinist? Like, come on. Can you be a Calvinist? Can you imagine?
My middle name's John as well, so it's Calvin John, the other way around.
The Calvinist. Yeah. We'll have a new type of Calvinism.
For me, there's 2 points to this story. One, you had Labour MPs at this event. And it's not
Pete, the bonus point goes to you if you can tell us what 4-star hotel it was in.
It was the Earl of
Doncaster.
I think it's the Earl of Doncaster.
Oh, wow!
I'll tell you what. Peers of the realm in Yorkshire. What will they think of next?
No, but, in all seriousness, there were Labour MPs at this event. The strikes were estimated to cost just the hospitality sector £800 million.
Whoa.
And you had Labour Party members and MPs there celebrating with the people that are essentially going to put people out of work. I thought that was absolutely objectionable.
No, that's disgusting.
There's also the big problem that this is ASLEF. It's not the RMT. And the ASLEF are affiliated to the Labour Party. And if and my big question, nobody in the Labour Party has ever been able to answer this, is if when they're sat across from they're ever in power and they're sat across from the trade unions, how can they put the public first whilst taking their money at the same time?
Hear, hear.
How can they do that?
Well, they don't strike when Labour are in power. They only do it when the Tories are there to get them out.
OK, so has ASLEF organised a glitzy party, Lois? Is it true or is it false?
Yeah, it's true.
It's absolutely true!
That Was the Woke That Was continues after the break. Welcome back to That Was the Woke That Was.
Right, well, Rabbit, were you going to go to the ASLEF Christmas party next year?
Oh, yeah, I go to every single one. It's a blast. We talk about workers' rights, how much we hate Thatch, how much we hate you.
Thatcher. We're not having abbreviations here. OK, what are the scores?
Calvin Robinson is winning by 1 point.
1 point to Calvin! There we go. These scores don't work very well. OK, so on to Pete. Lent and Easter have been cancelled by the London School for Economics in a bid to abolish Christian calendar terminology. I mean, it's worrying.
I saw something about this, and it's increasing all across the country, actually. They're cancelling Hanukkah, they're cancelling Christmas for all different reasons, similar to what conversation we just had previously. There's an anti-Judeo-Christian sentiment.
We had this question last week, so I don't want to be repetitious, but the National Trust, which has published its calendar, has every single religious holiday in, apart from Christmas and Easter.
Very strange.
It is strange. It's almost fashionable to be Christophobic.
Yeah.
Anything else, everything else is exotic and foreign, so we have to take that on board.
Well, apart from being Jewish at the moment.
No.
Have you noticed that Christmas adverts are missing Christmas at the moment?
Yeah.
And people are using that horrible American terminology of happy holidays.
I saw something, and I talked about it on the radio show the other day. I saw where a school was saying that potentially they were very worried that playing Christmas songs was a hate crime because it was racist against Muslims. I mean, I just worry. Look, I said this to you before. You were quite surprised that I'm a practicing Catholic. I don't go on about it, though I have done today.
I think everyone's quite surprised you're practicing Catholic.
But it's only because you're here. But I just feel like being a Christian now is a dirty word. I feel like there's an attack on our culture and our heritage.
Yeah.
And even people who aren't regular churchgoers must have noticed that Christmas is being eradicated.
Absolutely right, but what are we going to do about it?
Fight.
I'm not suggesting we fight, but we need to be... I mean, I shouldn't be surprised that you're a Catholic. I should know, but by the way you live your life and the things you say, that you're a Catholic.
Well, no, I mean, you wouldn't, would you?
I'm not suggesting I wouldn't, but I'm saying...
Just wait till we go to the pub after.
be more overt with our faith, and we need to be, say, yes, I'm a Christian, and not be ashamed or shy
But
about
also,
it.
one thing I would say is because they want to get rid of phrases like Michaelmas and all the terms names, and I think it's because what would stagger me is it's always in one direction. We always have to get rid of our culture to make way for somebody else.
Yeah, how's that inclusive?
And it's just, but they say that it is inclusive, and I don't understand the logic of that. How can it be inclusive to get rid of something?
It's replacement.
To replace, that's a better phrase for it. It's replacement, not inclusion.
What they're trying to do, I would suggest, Lois, is that it's this belief in struggle, which I mentioned before. They are talking about eradicating our culture and our heritage and replacing it with something else. That's the only conclusion one can draw.
Well, what you're going to have is, if you've got a group in society who are very passionate about their faith, for example, Islam, and there are huge numbers in comparison to Jewish people, for example, which is just under 300,000, whereas there's quite a few million Muslims in this country. If they're going to be passionate about their faith, then they will end up being the predominant voice. The squeakiest wheel gets the oil. I've said that before.
I mean, it is a fair point. I remember I had a friend of mine who, and I know we're very critical of the Russian government, but he was a diplomat from the former Soviet Union, and he said the view in the former Soviet Union is that if you do not stand up for your culture, it will be replaced.
Yes.
Which is fine if that's what we want.
I also think it's the fact that a lot of people are scared to actually have these kind of conversations. There's a lot of self-censorship, which I think is one of the biggest problems we have, is people won't stand up and say, I don't think that's right. Yeah. But yet they'll say it. They'll do that classic thing where they'll look around and make sure no one's listening and then give their opinion. And we have to stop that kind of society.
But the real definition of tyranny is when everybody lies to each other.
Yeah.
We are sitting around. I mean, if the police bang on my door, which may well happen, complaining.
But we don't talk about that.
On the serious note, yes, it is the police. They're going to bang on my door. Yeah. But if the police bang on my door about the fact that I maintain that somebody with a penis and testicles is a man, then the result of that will be that they will be telling me that they believe that somebody with a penis and testicles is a woman, and I'll be telling them that I believe they're correct, and then I'll apologise to avoid court. Yeah. That is tyranny, because everybody knows it's nonsense.
But I think what happens is that we don't fight back ever. We're too polite.
I do think the public are now starting to just roll their eyes at this, that actually a lot of this has become parody and satire. Like, how many times do you see a character designed in a certain way to clearly make out that they're woke? And I do think it's actually Nicola Sturgeon that I think has hit peak woke. And it was when it was all over the trans and the prisoner incident.
Right.
I think that was a real point for the general public where they went, this is just nonsense.
OK, let's bring on the bunny to talk about Just Stop Oil! Right, so do you believe that the reason that you're able to get away with your protests is people just being polite?
To an extent, but I also think everyone actually agrees with us, and that's why they don't try to stop it.
That's why there's no need for democracy, because everyone agrees with you.
Exactly.
I mean, that is a real worry, though, isn't it? That you want to abolish democracy and have a supreme Soviet in its place.
Is that a worry?
It is a worry for me.
Well, I guess we'll have to agree to get.
By the way, I just want to ask you now, what do you think of Calvin having taken holy orders?
Holy orders from who?
Out. Thank you very much, Woke Rabbit. OK, has Lent and Easter been cancelled by the LSE? Is it true or is it false?
False.
It's absolutely and unfortunately true.
I'm not applauding
Not following that one.
No.
That is the first time when there's been no applause whatsoever. OK, so to Ben. Shane McGowan's family have been warned not to play Fairy Tale of New York at his wake because it contains homophobic lyrics and would be a hate crime. Is it true or is it false?
I always found it weird people get upset about that one particular word. That he also refers to scumbags, maggots. He says, Merry Christmas, I pray God it's our last. The whole thing is an offensive, aggressive
that's the
sort
point.
of... Sorry, that's the whole point of the song. It's not supposed to be nice.
The other thing that is ridiculous about it is that she accuses him of being gay, but he isn't, because he's married to her. He's married to her.
Yeah.
Very clearly not a literal offence.
So has Shane McGowan's family been warned not to play Fairy Tale of New York? Is it true or is it false?
I'd say false.
It's absolutely false!
Hey.
So to Lois, the Home Secretary is to ban care workers from bringing their entire family to the UK. Is it true or is it false?
Well, we know that they're just doing this at the moment because they've seen how angry people are about immigration and they have to address it. So this is a last-ditch attempt by the Tories to maybe come across slightly conservative. I don't know. I mean, the thing is, they're talking about curbing legal immigration, not having families and friends, or not families, but relatives and things like that. But they're not doing anything about the people coming over every day on the boat.
What amazes me is the stupidity of this, where you sit round and you go, having immigration to the UK boosts the economy. Yes, but the problem is the in-work benefits these people get, the housing benefits these people get, the education for their children, the NHS, all of these services are put under massive pressure. John Redwood estimates that the average care worker who comes into this country costs the taxpayer £250,000 a year.
Well, I had a drink with an economist the other night because I have very highbrow cocktail evenings, and he said to me...
Somebody does an A-level in economics.
No, proper economist. Anyway, he said to me, the unspoken thing, the thing that nobody will say, is that there isn't a pot of money that people have paid into for their pensions. It's all been spent. Yeah. So without bringing people in, we can't pay people's pensions. And that is the God-honest truth. So he said the Home Office want to curb immigration and the Treasury say, we can't afford it. And that's why it never, ever stopped.
My generation and Ben's generation were told that you could go to university, study whatever you like, and it's perfectly fine. Nor, maybe you should study a degree that gets you into a job that's going to be relevant and earn you a lot of money and also fills you in the jobs market. And so that's one of the biggest problems that we have.
Do you know anybody under the age of 25 who isn't a marketing assistant?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how many people do dance theory and suddenly think they're going to get a job?
There's plenty of people in recruitment.
Very good-looking individuals under 25, don't you, Pete, from what you've told me?
I couldn't possibly tell you that.
I still think that's too far. University isn't to get a job.
Well,
It's to learn the best there has been and to keep our culture going and to contribute to the knowledge base.
I want us to go back to that.
Well,
definitely.
hang on. Is it? I think there has to be a balance, doesn't there?
Well, we should look more at vocations. If people want to get a job, they should leave school and become an apprentice and learn the skill trade.
Nurses shouldn't have to have a degree.
Yeah, we don't need nurses having degrees. We don't need policemen having degrees.
We don't respect apprenticeships, though. I mean, my dad started off as an apprentice on the railways and built his way up and, did a degree when he needed to do a degree, did a master's degree when he needed to do a master's degree. Rather than just him going straight to university, there was an incremental process there, which I think makes a lot more sense.
Definitely.
It's Tony Blair's thing that everyone has to go to university. We don't. We need to close down these universities.
And also, one thing that we also took away so many things that we gave to people to study certain things. So the nurses bursary, I think scrapping that was one of the worst things we ever did. Yeah. So when we look at the one of the policies that they've just announced is about care workers. It is absolutely no doubt to me that eventually, in about 5 years' time, we'll say that this policy is why the NHS is in, well, there's nobody working in it. Well, though, as Kevin O'Sullivan pointed out, would anybody notice any difference? But I thought that was quite funny. But this is the reality of it, that until we fix these long-term problems, this is nothing but a sticking plaster. We've got to get away from this.
I didn't realise this was the thing. I didn't realise it was the case that care workers could bring the whole family over as well.
And they're looking at student visas as well, which is one of the big ones. So that's gone to the migration.
I always think of students being quite young, but the idea I'll bring my grandchildren with me. Also, the other thing is, what are these people studying? I'm studying underpants pulling up at Cambridge Ring Road University.
And they won't do it. I guarantee you they won't do it because most of the money the universities are earning are from Chinese students.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's no way they're going to cut down on that.
And that's going to be one thing that the university is going to kick off, saying they've got no money once you start.
I can't understand why universities are neo-Marxist and woke. The Chinese funding it.
The Chinese are the only reasonable ones.
They're coming over here studying things that we actually need.
Yeah. but I mean, you make a joke about that, but the engineering departments are all full of foreign students. UK students are all studying marketing and underpants pulling up.
Gender studies.
Shoelace tying. Okay. As the Home Secretary said, he's going to ban foreign workers from bringing their families. Is it true or false?
It's true.
It's absolutely true! The winner is Calvin. Congratulations to everyone on our panel. Lois Perry, Ben Loughnane, and of course Pete Barnes, and a special congratulations to our winner and newly ordained priest. It's Calvin Robinson. I'm off to the pub. Bye.